Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 28 of VAAS Live. And boy, do we have an episode for you. So I hope you're tuning in. I hope you've got your easels out, your paint supplies, your drawing supplies, your imagination, whatever it is that you're going to be creating with us today, because boy, do we have an episode. Along with me, Seth Jones, co-founder and instructor here at VAAS, I've got our humble wizard and our master draftsman, Chad Nuss. Chad, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And Chad, today we've got a very special, very talented guest. We've got Owen Rairick with us. Chad, how excited are you to have Owen join us?
I mean, it's all right, I guess. I mean, No, it's amazing. His work is incredible, and I'm really looking forward to picking his brain a little bit about his process and experience and that kind of thing. So
that is awesome. Owen, thanks for joining us, bud. It's such an honor and such a privilege to have a young, talented artist join us today. How's your evening going? Are you excited?
Oh yeah, it's going great. I'm a little nervous, but hoping it'll go good. I'm feeling good. So
I think nervous is usually pretty good. As I tell a lot of my students, when you're nervous, that means you care, and we're so excited, so glad. We have got so much to talk about. We've got so much to create. Thank you for everybody that's jumping and joining us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram, or wherever you're watching us, whether it's live or later. We thank you for joining us. Again, we're the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, a fine art academy out of Louisville, Kentucky. And the goal for this is for you to be creating with us live. We're going to be working on a whole bunch of different projects. And right now, I'm going to go around the cameras, if you will, and ask what everybody's got going on. Chad, you've been guiding us through this amazing process of your graphic novel series. What are you working on today? Where are you at? And what are you excited to accomplish today?
yeah, so originally I was going to start a new page, and that's what I had posted about it earlier this week. And I was going to start page 6, which is basically it's a down shot. I don't know how to say it, but you're from above looking down on the spaceship coming up towards you. But I forgot that the spaceship I'm drawing, I actually drew on page 1. I'm in the middle of inking it, and I need it as reference. So I thought, no, I need to go back and finish inking that page, so then I'll have the spaceship that I can refer back to when I draw from a different angle. So I thought it would be good for you all to see my inking process anyways. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and ink this page, and then we'll get to the new page later. So, yep.
Which I'm personally, a lot of you guys may not know this yet, and we will dive into this tonight because this is a rare occasion. Chad has a very unique inking process for his comic pages and his comic style. So, Chad, I cannot wait to dive in this with you. Owen, if you don't know how he inks yet, you're going to be like, wait, what? How are you inking this? Because it's a very unique process. So stick around so we can find out some of Chad's tips and tricks about how he inks his comic pages. Owen, we're so glad you're here. I've been seeing some of the work you've been doing. For those of you who don't know, Owen's he's home from his college experience as a fine arts student at the University of Cincinnati. And when we met, I was just absolutely blown away. We met through a mutual connection, I think a family relative, and Owen's personality just came through his email, and we just met and connected, and I was just super excited. Chad was super excited to have him come and join us here in the Academy. And so Owen's working out of VAAS for the last month and this coming month as well. And you've been doing some amazing projects, and one of the ones that I thought was spectacular is actually what's on camera now. Owen, what are you working on? And tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, it's a little hard to see. Like right here's got a little glare, but this is just a painting of a house. There's a couple different houses in it, but nothing too fancy. It's actually it's just a gift for some of my friends who are getting married in the beginning of August. So this is just something I'm doing for them. This will be their first house essentially. So they don't know about it. Hopefully they're not watching.
I was going to say, if they don't know about it now, buddy, they might now. They might actually know about it now.
They probably got more important things to do, but that's all right.
The good news is that the artwork, the final artwork, will still be a surprise. So that's absolutely amazing. That's wonderful.
For sure.
But what medium are you working in? I mean, it's the early stages. I see you've got like a raw sienna underpainting, but what are you working in? What medium?
Yeah, so this is just oil paint. That's probably the medium I'm most comfortable with. I've been doing oil paint for 7-8 years, I think. Sometimes throughout the year, I'll spend more time on it than others, especially depending on classes and stuff while I'm in school. I might not work on oil paint for a whole semester, kind of just depends. So this is oil paint. And you're exactly right, Seth. You can kind of see my raw sienna undercoat here. So I kind of sketch it in with a pencil and then use my raw sienna as kind of just a base coat. I have my reference over to the side of me, but it's a lot of blues, a lot of like cool colors and greens, and it's a kind of an overcast day. So I was like, well, I'll put kind of a orangey raw sienna undercoat, make it kind of pop if any of it kind of peeks through. I like when that happens. So right now I kind of have these two houses mostly blocked in. I'm moving on to the main house, their house right now. So
It's awesome. I think it's looking amazing. It's looking awesome. Thank you to everybody that's jumping in. I want to give a quick shout out to Patricia. She says, hi, fellas, gentlemen. Hi back to Patricia. Wonderful for you guys to jump on. Everybody that's jumping on over on Instagram, we're so grateful for you guys. Everybody that's on Twitch, you guys are amazing. I am going to be working on the hair of my daughter's portrait here. I'm almost finished with the grisaille process. The grisaille process is a great underpainting. It allows me to control values, lights and darks, the chiaroscuro of the painting. And then I'll end up doing oil glazes on top to add in some of those colors. And so I'm really excited to get going on that. And I feel like my introductions are just about done. So Chad, without further ado, as you're watching, if you can see on the bottom left of your screen there, Chad is inking this page of this ship before he goes into another page. But Chad, you do something that I think is just very unique. I know other people do it. I know it's not just you, but I really haven't seen somebody do it to the extent that you do. Will you tell us a little bit about that? But before you do, Deep Pixel Art, AIR20, hi back. He said they say hi to us. Make sure we say hi back, guys. We're doing great. But Chad, this inking process that you do is spectacular. And we're very fortunate to have one of the ink pages here up in the gallery in VAAS. And it's beautiful. Tell us a little bit about how you work and what you kind of go through there.
Yeah, so this is my method. No one else does this. This is original to me. So I get all the credit for it. And yeah, no, just kidding. I'm not the only one that's done this at all. But yeah, there's different methods that you can do in inking a page. Like for most traditional artists will either draw with blue pencil so it's non-reproducible, I get, or non-reproducible, so you can ink right on top of that. But what I'll do is I'll do the pencils. And then other people will actually ink right on top of the pencils. So I like to keep the pencils. I still want those. And so what I'll do is actually ink on tracing paper on top of the pencils, and then attach the tracing paper to a fresh sheet of white. So then it comes out as just a finished ink page. And then I scan that in, and then I'll have a digital copy of it to where I can go in and fix anything I need to, or get it ready for printing or putting on dialogue and, thought bubbles and those kind of things. So it's not like super complex. I mean, it's basically just putting a piece of tracing paper over, but yeah, not many people do it that way. Most people today will do it digitally. That does cut out a step because you can go straight into digital. You don't even need a pencil rendering. So for me, this is kind of a two-step process. So I basically draw every page twice. So that does slow me down a little bit, but I like the art of inking. It's a completely different thing than the pencil. It's not just tracing. I'm interpreting my own pencils. So even through the tracing paper, sometimes you miss some small details, but that gives you the opportunity as the inking process to put in some additional kind of artistic flair, I guess you could say, or whatever. So yeah, so that's the main thing. I use fine liners, pens for this, and I'll use some brush pens as well for the bigger areas of just flat black. So that's my process. Yeah.
I think the thing that's unique to me, Chad, is, and what I really want to know is, tracing paper has a different texture to it, right? It's got that kind of vellumy kind of feel.
Yeah.
A lot of times the inkers that I know that do traditional inking, they love that strong paper feel, right? Like Bristol almost. Yeah. What is it like? Do you think does it help? Does it slide more? What is it about the tracing paper texture that gives you these beautiful lines and these beautiful values that you get?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of, it's as smooth as the Bristol, and it's very delicate, so it forces you to have a very light hand, which I think contributes to my inking process. And then, like I said before, it doesn't, most people think tracing paper is very, very fragile, and it is to some extent, so you do have to be careful, but it doesn't leak through. I've never had an issue with it. I've used whiteout on it. Sometimes I'll use that for effect, and it holds great. I like the texture of it. It's smooth, but it's not like drawing on glass. I have a hard time.
Yeah.
I don't like drawing on glass. So you do have that kind of texture to it, to where you still feel like you're actually drawing on something, I guess. But yeah. So I enjoy drawing on it a lot.
Owen, have you done a lot of pen and ink work before, or is that something that you'd like to dive into in the future?
I've done like a little bit of it. I mean, I'm, as far as like comic books go, I'm much more of a appreciator than an artist of it. I've kind of dabbled with the process a little bit. And I mean, obviously, like as an art form, it's awesome. And I feel like I definitely want to go into that a little bit more in the future. I hadn't really honestly heard about kind of the Chad, like the process that you're talking about as far as like the tracing paper. So that's when I heard that, I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And you addressed it, but I feel like the one thing that was on my mind is like, oh yeah, like I'd be afraid it would tear or something. But I've had a little bit of experience, but not a lot.
Yeah, I think it might tear if you use like quill pens or whatever, but I don't use that, so the fine liners work just fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and the thing that I think is interesting, Chad, is, I yes, obviously, before the advent of digital, right? A lot of people would either reprint their pencils or go directly on their pencils. And the idea of inking directly on pencils is terrifying to me, right? It's like, what happens if I accidentally spill or drip or scratch or something, and then my original pencils are gone? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just terrifying in itself. So I like the idea of the tracing paper because, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about it. If it doesn't go the direction you want, great, start over, right? You can start again. And with that tracing paper, it's a low cost, low fear. I'd say almost low fear, if that makes sense. Like, okay, I made a mistake. Well, let me grab another sheet and go at it again, right?
Yeah, I don't understand. Like I watch some inkers, like professional inkers, and how they work, and they'll ink over someone's original pencils, and the skill that they have is just mind blowing to me. So I feel the same way. It's like once you put down a mark, like it's there. Like there's no forgiveness in this. So except for using whiteout, which I don't like that. I mean, that's like trying to cover over a watercolor painting with some white color pencil or something like that. It just takes away from it being like a pure ink drawing. But like I said before, sometimes I'll use the whiteout on purpose for effects,
Right.
like especially like stars and explosions and little texture and things like that. But I like the idea of if I know that I can make a mistake for whatever reason, it loosens me up. Whereas if I have a pencil drawing and I know, like, if I mess one of these up, like, there's really no coming back from it. Like, you'll have to change the drawing, and then to destroy the pencil, essentially, you're covering it up. You never have that again. So that's why I like keeping it separate. And as I said before, it's two different art forms. There's two different approaches that you take when you're inking. So versus penciling.
I would agree entirely. Well, Owen, I'm super excited because we have some samples of your work. And as I mentioned, when we first met, I was not only blown away just by your professionalism and your excitement and your energy about the world of fine arts, but I was really honestly blown away by some of the pieces that you've created. And so if you guys are online right now, be excited because I'm going to show you some of his work. And I'm going to ask a couple of questions, Owen, if that's all right with you. But I'm going to start just by showing a couple. Take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely stunning. Because, Owen, you're really driven a lot by fantasy art. But I don't want to say, a lot of times in this day and age, we think of only like, I don't know if you'd say it extreme fantasy, right? But like high fantasy. But your fantasy work is very conceptual, I think, is a way that I would put it. It's not just very topical. And, this piece, I think, is absolutely brilliant. I correct me if I'm wrong or not, but I believe that's graphite. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah. It's just graphite pencil. And then some chalk, like some white chalk pencil.
I mean, absolutely stunning. Take a look at this other work, ladies and gentlemen. Just fantastic. And then let's go through just a couple more. We can always go back to these, but I want to get these on screen. Take a look at this. And then the one that really, really captured my attention, and the one that I want to talk about, is this piece here. And Owen, this is the piece that really stuck out to me, and it really made me feel as though I was witnessing and experiencing something unique in the sense of storytelling, but talent and execution. But it reminds me very much, and Chad, you may get this because you are one of our resident art historians here. It feels very contemporary Norman Rockwell to me. Is that some of your influences, or what's motivated you to paint in this fashion? Obviously, the previous pieces were more fantasy driven, right? Much more, creative concept art, if you will. But this is very much, in my opinion, a contemporary Norman Rockwell piece. Tell us a little bit about this, if you will.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give a long answer. I think that's on theme for this show. But for a very long time, for probably as long as I can remember, I've always loved like dragons and fantasy, and I think my parents got me a book when I was young. It's like how to draw dragons and fantasy creatures or something like that. And I mean, I've always kind of loved that stuff. And then even like movie influences like Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia, just always loved like animals and fantasy creatures and kind of like these stories that could never really happen, but are just so cool. So that definitely has kind of continued to influence my work, which yeah, and for sure. This piece is obviously a little bit unique, as you kind of pointed out, Seth. It's not super fantastical by any means, but another influence of mine for sure has been Norman Rockwell. My dad is like a print of his called the, I believe it's like The Inventor or something like that.
Ah, yeah.
And so I was familiar with kind of his stuff, and then as I've even just kind of gone through school and just gotten older and seen more of his work, I was like, oh wow, like I really like this. Like it's kind of this blend between like like real life, but also kind of like these caricatures of people and just kind of these emotions and stories and these kind of like little moments. So that's always just been, I feel like an influence to me, but definitely more recently. This piece, I feel like mostly was kind of to fulfill the requirements of what the project was supposed to be for. This is for a class I took in last fall. It was supposed to be just sort of a self-portrait, and it kind of had to address or reflect like a symbol in some sort of way. So it was pretty open-ended. And of course, I think my initial kind of approach is like, okay, well, how can I put a cool, fantastical twist to it? And then I was like, well, maybe I'll do something a little bit different. So I think I kind of had this idea in my head after seeing Norman Rockwell's triple self-portrait that he did. I just love that painting. Like it's awesome, and it's also just like super hilarious. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do a triple self-portrait directly, so I did a double self-portrait. Try to make it a little bit funny, doing like a goofy face on the portrait that I'm drawing. And then I kind of went back later and was like, okay, how can I add a piece of symbolism to this? But yeah, so that's kind of how that is. I think my more general approach to oil painting is, I feel like it's got to be almost entirely influenced by one of my teachers. His name is Fred Fields. If neither of you are familiar with his work, or anyone watching, like he's just like beyond phenomenal. He's an amazing artist, and he lives just like right in LaGrange. I guess I met him at like an art competition, and he was one of the judges, which he would tell you he doesn't like doing. He definitely likes kind of just keeping to himself and staying out of like art competitions and being a judge. But I kind of had met him. I guess I met him probably when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, and then eventually I was able to kind of like learn from him, take some classes from him. And I mean, he taught me. I mean, I'd never touched oil paint before then, and he pretty much just showed me everything that he knew, and it's for sure been one of my favorite mediums to work in since. So yeah,
that opens up so many things. Like I've got like 50 questions. Obviously, my mind always goes a million miles an hour, but that I want to address that one right there because it's always wonderful when you have someone who takes you under the wing and mentors you. Chad and I have talked about a lot of different individuals and things of that nature, and obviously I've talked about one of my great mentors. But you mentioned something. You've talked about in the opening. You said that you've been working in oils for almost 7 or 8 years, and you're still relatively a young man. In a lot of cases, a lot of people don't teach oils to young artists, right? They kind of stay away from oils a lot of ways. And they go, oh, well, we'll have you work in acrylics or we'll have you work in this. But how valuable was it to you to start working in oils at an early age as a young artist? I mean, because to me, it's a mastery of the medium. So the sooner you start, because we teach oils here in our exploration sessions all the way down to ages 6 and 7, right? But how was it for you to be exposed to oils when normally a lot of times you don't get a chance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Like I said, like I had never even like touched oils before learning under Fred. And I think, I mean, I had painted before. Drawing I was most comfortable with before then. I mean, I've always loved to draw, and obviously that's probably one of the more accessible mediums there is, especially for a young artist. And I had done a little bit of acrylic painting, but never really kind of like fell in love with it. And I think reflecting on even just kind of like how I've grown, I guess, like with oil as like a medium. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was definitely kind of a slow learning curve at first. It took me a minute to kind of like figure out like what I was doing. But I think in some ways it was probably helpful for me to maybe not have even like messed with paint at all really before then. Because then I wasn't kind of maybe approaching it with any sort of preconceived notions or anything like that. But obviously I think like just being able to have been exposed to it,
Interesting.
When I was in like 6th or 7th grade, kind of even going forward I don't even know. I mean, it's helpful now because I can kind of like, okay, like I'm familiar with it. I've messed with it. Now I can kind of just like keep growing on these sorts of fundamentals and keep experimenting with things. And even now it's like, I kind of am more and more refining my process and trying to challenge myself with certain things. And I don't know, but I don't know if I answered your question very well. But.
No, that was beautiful. Absolutely. It answered the question. And this is something, Chad, you've talked about this a little bit too, is like, historically, artists would apprentice very early, right? Like they would start out earlier and they'd find that craft. Chad, you're a big believer in honing that craft and really diving in, correct, sir? Like, I mean, you really, you love the idea of the old masters and their apprentices, right? I mean, do you think that's kind of what Owen was getting here, is like that early introduction? I know it wasn't quite as early as like, say, some of the old masters, but I mean, have we gotten away from that as a society, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what you're saying, especially with like acrylics and pencil and everything. Like they're more accessible. So like in order to really build into someone with something like acrylics requires a lot more time investment that I think we've lost a bit in our generation or our current cultural situation, where we want things more immediate. And so using oils really forces you to slow down, take your time and that kind of thing. And then just the idea of like working alongside a master artist with an apprentice, like a lot of that has gone away, unfortunately. And I think we've tried to replace it with maybe more like social media or, other kind of materials or resources that I think can't replace one-on-one personal interaction. So you can definitely learn a lot online. You can learn a lot from books, but it's very different when you're standing next to a master artist and watching them work and then applying that to your own work, So yeah, I also agree, like the opportunity for you to have experience that kind of mentorship at your age is rare, and I think that's sad. I mean, and you can obviously see it in your work. Like that first one that you or posted when you were showing his work, like that was crazy. Like that one right there. Like I just kept staring at that because of how many good things you've done in that piece. That's super intriguing. Just even technically, it's really good. Compositionally, it's really good. The way that you use value is amazing. Like the focal point is very clear. I mean, there's so much right and good about that piece. And so I think like examples like that, certainly you can learn that on your own. And maybe that was something you did before you were even exposed to having a mentor or someone to build into you like that. But at the same time, like to take that level of skill that you have and have someone build into you like that just increases it exponentially in ways that you can't if you're just on your own, for sure. So
I agree. Now, Owen, you are currently studying in university, and oh, here we go. Hold on, we got a question here. Hey guys, Thomas here. Sorry I couldn't join in today, but it's good to tune in for a few. Owen, having such an early introduction to oil painting, you probably didn't have the usual fears to the medium. So I think that's interesting. Here's a twofold question for you, Owen. You know, a lot of times there is a big fear of oils, right? People have this intimidation factor to oils. Did you have any of those fears? And secondly, what were, if any, challenges that you had? Great questions, Tom. Thanks for joining in and asking the questions.
Yeah, that is a good question. I feel like it wasn't really that long ago, but I mean, I can't remember entirely maybe my whole thought process approaching learning oils. I definitely don't recall being or having any sort of like real like fears. I think if anything, I was just kind of excited and I don't know, definitely eager. But I mean, of course, things were challenging. Trying to think. I think like the first thing that I can think of as kind of being an immediate challenge, and this also even just kind of be a part of painting in general, is even just like color mixing and like like mixing colors. And that was actually something that I didn't do at first. Fred, my mentor, we kind of would go through kind of some different paintings as I kind of progressed, and for maybe like the first couple or few paintings, like he would mix my colors every session, just to kind of obviously he would show me and whatever, but
to get you
that was something that was hard for me to maybe kind of approach initially, and then.
Do you feel like that color mixing has now become a strength of yours? Because when I see some of your pieces, I don't think color becomes a massive challenge. Even watching you now on this live stream paint some of those blues in, right? You have a good understanding of color theory and color, but do you think that one of those challenges has now become a strength? Or do you feel like you're still, I mean, obviously we're always growing, right? Ancora imparo, everybody. But do you feel like that's now become something that you're relatively strong in? Because when we look at some of these other pieces, when we look at something like this, or even something, like Chad and I were talking about with the very influenced Norman Rockwell piece, your understanding of color is, I would say, pretty strong. So, how did that challenge become a strength for you?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Was it repetition? Was it just kind of diving in and I don't want to say failing, but just diving in and kind of messing around with color and just seeing what happens? Or do you feel like you just kind of naturally progressed as you continue to work and develop?
Yeah, I feel like all the above, honestly. I feel like
nice.
At least kind of for me, kind of even up to this point, like it's I feel like I could probably sum it down to just practice. Like it's always just kind of been practice, like, failing and trying new things and experimenting. And I feel like if I get, if I get a little maybe like more specific, like, okay, I'm trying to mix this certain blue. It's like, okay, well, I know I'm starting with ultramarine blue. All right, well, it's not that vibrant, so maybe I add a little bit of white in there, or maybe a little bit of burnt umber, maybe a little bit of viridian green or something like that, and then something that Fred kind of taught me early on was like there's like a little bit when you're mixing paint, even just like a little bit can make a difference. And so it's not, especially with oils, just because oils you can stretch them so far. It's like I'm not taking a glob of paint, I'm taking a little bit here and a little bit there, and then I think just kind of over time, just like got better and improved at noticing and being able to more quickly identify how much titanium white I need, or how much burnt umber I need to kind of to match this color. And then something I do a lot is I'll use my palette knife and hold up my color to my paint to my reference, and if it matches, then we're good. And if it doesn't, it's like, okay, I'll adjust it a little bit. So I think it's practice and improving and failing and trying and progressing. Yeah, all of that.
Well, I kind of led the witness there, Chad, a little bit, because that is something you and I are both very, very adamant about with all of our students in all of our classes, right? How often in your class sessions, Chad, that you're leading, or even in your own personal work, do you realize practice is what it takes, right? I mean, you talk about this a lot, especially from my knowledge of like drawing from reference cast, which is challenging, right? Charcoal work, which is challenging. We literally were talking to our apprentice Layla earlier, correct, about practicing and developing. I mean, that is a huge point of your leadership, I think, right? In mentoring young artists. Tell us about your philosophy on that. I think you have a great approach to your mindset of this.
Yeah. So just like you said, I actually just had this conversation today because, as a teacher, you're always evaluating how lessons went or how, entire classes go. You think of your approach, things you've said, whatever. And one of the things that I'm often struggling with as a teacher is how much demonstration do you do, how much teaching do you do, and how much just letting them practice do you do. And sometimes, you can show someone something, you can talk about it, you can even demonstrate it, but they're not actually going to learn until they sit down and do it. So, for example, I was talking to Layla about this today in our charcoal class last week. I showed them, like a table, a value table, how you can go from, a deep black all the way up to white using tone charcoal and things like that. And I had made it before. I had made the little chart beforehand and gave the instruction for them to try to recreate that, and just said, okay, there you go, just recreate it. And then after that, they had to then use those same principles to draw a sphere, and then draw a fruit, and then draw a cast on toned paper. And basically my approach was I showed them what it looks like. I told them the basic principles, and I said, you basically just have to work on this. You have to practice. You have to get your hands dirty. So I was talking to Layla today about that, and I said, part of me when I walked away, I was like, I probably should have done more demonstration, because I think some students really are looking for someone to say, okay, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. And I think there is some value to that, absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, I could show you all day long how to draw a portrait, or how to draw still life, or how to shade, or whatever it is. But you're not, I can't get into your head and your hands to like make you do it the way I think you should do it. Like that only comes with you actually sitting down and drawing or painting or whatever it is. And so it's a delicate balance between demonstrating, giving step-by-step instruction, and then just plain practice. And that's really the huge thing about learning, is just practicing. Even if you watch me or watch someone else paint or draw and you watch their process, that's helpful and you learn a lot from that, but it only goes so far, because you're going to find processes that work better for you. And so you'll take little bits and pieces here and there, but at the end of the day, you have to get to a point where you're learning on your own and you're learning for yourself through practice.
You guys are absolutely brilliant, and I'm so grateful you guys are on here. And oftentimes I find myself, Chad, when I talk about practice, I go back to sports, which is, if you've watched any of our episodes, Owen, if you watch, some of the previous ones, it's not lost on me. But I'm very fortunate because I have a young student named Hannah, who is a superior athlete and an amazing artist. And it's amazing to me because a lot of times when we're in class together, I get to use sports analogies, Chad, and she's like, yep, get it. She's like, understand it completely. A lot of times I'll use sports analogies, and my students look at me like, what are you talking about? But I think everybody can get this one. When you're watching sports, you are learning how that's done, right? Like you watch it. Like we as children, as infants, we watch others walk, right, Chad? We watch others do things, we mimic that physicality, but you still have to do it on your own. You don't just start walking without walking, right? I know that sounds idiotic in a sense, but it's true. And so I agree with both of what you said and what Owen said. Sometimes it's just practice. And I've talked about this before. I had a painting student come in, and she legitimately asked me, she goes, well, I get better if I do more of it. And everybody on here can look at that quote or that statement and go, well, yeah, but you got to think about what they're saying deeper, right? Is, am I actually going to get better even if I keep doing it, whether I have the talent or the skill or not? But I think the resounding answer from all three of us on here, and Thomas and Sarah and everybody else that's involved in the academy here, is yes, right? Practice absolutely makes an impact. And in the sport world, we had, a huge thing blow up a number of years ago with Allen Iverson. Or if you've watched the TV series Ted Lasso, he actually pulls up that statement. He's like, we talk about practice, man. We talk about practice, not a game, practice. But Chad, you also talk about a lot that sometimes pieces don't need to be finished works of art. And Thomas, our co-founder, believes in this as well. And you have an upcoming class starting next week called the Artist Sketchbook, which is all about practice, right, sir?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, man, I had a couple thoughts, and then you pulled the sketchbook, and now I was a bit distracted. No, that's all right. Yeah, so we have a sketchbook class coming up, which I'm really, really excited about, just because, with sketchbooks, the one thing that often comes up in class. I remembered the thing. Let me say the thing before I forget.
Of course.
Yeah. So a lot of times students come in to classes with an unrealistic expectation, in the sense that they think, okay, if I just do these things that the teacher tells me to do, am I just going to automatically master it? And it's so funny because I just put a post on Facebook about the portrait class, and I gave a bunch of it, examples of portraits I had drawn before. And one of the comments I had made, drawing portraits or painting portraits, but drawing portraits takes years to master and a lifetime to really understand how to do it well. And so that goes with anything really, but portraits in particular. And so I think sometimes students come in thinking, oh, I've got 4 weeks or I've got 8 weeks with this class. At the end of the class, I should be able to draw a portrait just as well as a professor or whoever the instructor is, or I should be able to just whip one out. It looks exactly like the person I'm trying to draw. And it's just an unrealistic expectation. And so part of my job as an instructor is to give you kind of the principles of how this works, but you're not actually going to master it until you put in the years and years and years of practice, of failing, of drawing faces that don't look like the person, and to go back to your other point about everything doesn't have to be this like wonderful, exquisite finished piece. Like you actually just saw one that I did that was on tone paper that I started last week, and I drew it, and it had some great qualities in it, but as you and I discussed, I said, I'm not happy with it because I went from this loose charcoal style and I immediately got too tight, too fast. And so it ended up not looking much exactly like my self-portrait, and it just looked too plastic, even though it had some great things in it, but it just wasn't right. And so I started over and did a new one today, and both of them are not finished, and it's okay. Like I just know that, from that one, what I learned was when I use charcoal, I do much better when I'm use a much looser style. It looks more accurate. It has more personality. It has more environment to it, those kind of things. So the perfect place to work all that out is in a sketchbook. And that's one thing that I often talk about in class, that the importance of a sketchbook. And our kind of misconception about sketchbooks is that we've kind of made them into these like
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. Yeah, that's the word I was looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah, yeah. This holy grail of artistic achievement, because we'll see the sketchbooks of like a Da Vinci or a Rembrandt or whatever, and you'll see even their sketches are better than our finished work. And we think, oh, that's what our sketchbook should look like, which is not the case at all. The point of a sketchbook is to work out all your ideas. So you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to put a lot of really bad drawings in them. And you're going to put stuff in there that you might not want people to see, but that's okay because it's your sketchbook. It's for you. And it's your decision whether you're going to let anyone see it. But the point being, the best way for you to learn is to work on the things that are really hard, draw the things you don't like, work on the stuff that you are not very good at, and eventually, over time, you'll get much better as an artist that way.
I couldn't agree more. But Owen, we are, I'd say, Chad, respectfully saying, more seasoned artists now, right? We were once young artists, as our Owen is here. But I will tell you that I have become much more comfortable with sketchbook work and the idea of pieces not having to be finished works. But that was learned over time. Owen, what's your approach as a very talented young artist who's studying academically? Do you feel like you're not achieving something if it's not a completed work, or do you go through the whole process of thumbnails and sketches and working it out? Because I was fortunate enough to get to see some insight on your double self-portrait there, and I loved seeing your progress on it. But tell the viewers a little bit about that. How do you take that approach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think,
Owen, if you haven't learned, I only ask good questions, sir.
of course.
I only ask good questions.
That's great. That's great.
Here, buddy.
You're doing the right job then.
Just kidding.
No, yeah. Yeah, I feel like for me, this has been, I feel like mostly kind of even like a self-observation, maybe like less than a conscious thought sometimes, but I feel like the planning process behind a piece is like super, super important to me. Because I really care about composition. I really care about colors. I really care about, if there's a story there, if there's a kind of like a symbolism or if not, or whatever it is, right? Like, however I need to fulfill the requirements of a piece I need to make for a class, and also like make something that is going to be enjoyable for me and make something that I am passionate about, or, however, whatever the boxes are that I need to check for completing a piece. And if it is a finished piece, then I definitely like will spend a lot of time trying to I don't know, like do a best job as I can, I suppose. So definitely includes thumbnails and trying out a bunch of different ideas, and I'll oftentimes kind of like brainstorm just like bullet point lists of whatever it is that I am going through, or the thoughts that I have about something like that. I have probably more recently started to kind of try and use like you guys are talking about a little bit, just kind of like using my sketchbook for what's the word? I guess more just like studies and kind of like not finished pieces, but okay, like I want to learn more about anatomy, or I want to figure out how this looks, or kind of like break this down. And so I'll do a bunch of sketches like that sometimes. But yeah. I feel like there's something else in your question that I neglected to answer.
No, I think you were great. I think, it's just this idea of, I think we have this sense of finality that has to happen very quickly, right, Chad? Which ties in a lot of what we've been discussing about, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes repetition, it takes, development, it takes exploration. But we have a couple of students who are brilliant at just coming up with concepts right on the fly, right? Trusting their instincts, doing very expressive work. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, right? I think, for some people, that planning stage can be considered a luxury, or it can be, time is of the essence if you're in the illustration world and you have, deadlines, or if you're in the freelance world, right, Chad? You and I have talked about that quite a bit. And so I think, everybody's process is different. There's no one right or wrong way, but I definitely see the value in planning and preparing and diving in and doing things like that. So Owen, I want to ask this next question. Chad, you were very fortunate to be able to attend. Correct me if I get this wrong, sir. I apologize. But the Ontario College of Art and Design, and you had a focus in illustration and sequential storytelling. I was very fortunate to attend the Savannah College of Art and Design, but that was many, many moons ago, so to speak, right? Many fortnights ago, especially considering Chad the Wizard. So that was like ancient times. But Owen, you are currently studying at the University of Cincinnati in their fine art department. What's it like studying art in the current educational system? Are you feeling like, it's just tell us a little bit about that. I don't want to lead too much, so just tell us a little bit about your experience, because you're going into your junior year. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, that is correct. So I'm going to school in Cincinnati right now. University of Cincinnati. They have their own sort of art school program. It's a building. It's called DAP. So it encompasses what it stands for is design, architecture, art, and planning. So it kind of encompasses a lot of, obviously like design sort of things like graphic design and, now I'm embarrassing myself, but kind of like a lot of like design related things, and obviously architecture and fine arts as well. And then a lot of like planning things like urban planning and I guess that you have like industrial design as well. So I'm in the fine arts part. It's been really cool. It's been, I guess I probably didn't really go into school with any sort of kind of like expectations, I guess. I was definitely kind of like, well, I like art and I want to get better and I want to do this as a career, and Cincinnati seemed like a very, very good option. It's been really cool. I feel like there's definitely been times where, I have doubts sometimes, like, oh, well, like, I don't know if this is working out or whatever, but I think overall, like, it's been very informative and I've been able to learn a lot. I feel like in my year, there's not more than like 50 students who are like third years in fine arts. It's probably around like maybe like 40 or so, maybe 50 or so people. Usually, and even like within fine arts, I can elaborate on this. Even within fine arts, you can kind of choose a bunch of different tracks. So there's like photography and video and digital art and ceramics and 3D and printmaking and drawing and painting. And so there's a lot of different kind of even like more specific avenues. And then obviously that kind of breaks up the classes more. And so the classes aren't usually super big, which is nice. And most of the time it's with peers who are, we're all going to be kind of at least somewhat interested in the same things, maybe like medium wise, but obviously we'll have a lot of different approaches to certain things, and a lot of different processes and a lot of different styles and a lot of different backgrounds. And so that's, so I think like the diversity there is nice, and there's you can get a lot of different feedback. I feel like there's a lot of things I could talk about. I don't know.
No, I think it's great. I mean, because Chad, one of the things we didn't really talk about was when you were at university, did you have smaller class sizes or were they larger?
Well, that is a great question. I mean, it was pretty mixed from what I remember, because it was actually a long time ago, because I graduated. I graduated in 98, so it's literally 27 years ago.
I don't think I realized it was that long ago.
Yeah. So if I do remember, like, I remember some advertising classes probably having like, I want to say like 20, 30 students. Yeah. And then some other class, like drawing classes, would be like kind of the size of our drawing space upstairs. So you'd have like 15 students maybe in there. Most of them, I would say like 10 to 15, some a little bit more, some a bit less. I remember having a couple art history classes. They had like small auditorium spaces. So, you'd have like 30, 40, 50 students in those. So it varied a bit depending on the class, for sure.
That's awesome. Oh, and what's it like having, or what's it like working out of VAAS over the summer? I mean, coming back, I remember the first time that I came back home from art school, it was like a warp. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, I'm back to quote unquote reality, right? I'm back to working at, a fast food restaurant. I'm back to this. I'm back to that. I'm no longer surrounded by, my mentors and professors. I'm no longer surrounded by the art community or the campus. But what's it been like being able to work out of VAAS? Because we love having you here, but what's it been like for you?
Yeah. I guess like to even just like preface, I think like I definitely feel similarly now to, it sounds kind of like what you experienced, Seth, I guess just like being home. Like, I think obviously Cincinnati isn't that far away, but I mean, there's there's like one peer that I have who's one of my good friends, and he lives close by, but that's about it. Like I'm pretty isolated from everyone else that I know there, and I'm pretty isolated from just like the community there. So that can be, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like another world almost, and it definitely can be a little bit isolating. But I mean, it's been really great to be here. I feel like sometimes without kind of a rhythm and a schedule, I can quickly and easily fall into just like doing nothing for a whole summer. So it's been really nice to just kind of like, okay, like I'm gonna get to VAAS at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm gonna work for a few hours, and then I'm gonna go home and kind of just move on with the rest of my day and whatever. So that's been very valuable. I feel like the space and this may be kind of funny, but just like the lighting, and like my house has bad lighting, and so being able to be in a studio space that has lighting, and I can work on a project and not have to sit outside in the sun or whatever. So that's it's been really great.
Well, and this is something. Oh, and if I can kind of dote on you a little bit, for all of you young artists out there that are watching live or potentially watching later and playing it back, Owen is very diligent. He very much comes in at the regular scheduled time. I think I don't want to say it's treated as a job per se, right, Owen? That's not what I'm saying, because you have a passion and a love for it. But you're very diligent about coming in and putting in the work and doing, the painting and getting the studies and doing this. And if you're a young artist out there, that makes all the difference. This kind of goes into what we've been talking about for the last 50 minutes or so, guys. Practice. Talent is driven by focus and practice, right? A lot of times, Chad says, and Chad, I'm not going to get it right, I apologize, but repetition and practice will beat out talent any day, right? And you hear this in other areas, but really, you go, well, you're just so talented. Talented diminishes the hard work that everybody puts in. And this is a great case, guys, where Owen comes in on his days. He comes in right on time, puts his work in, goes home, goes about his day. But you've got to put that time in. And I think it makes a huge difference. And Chad, me and you as well, right? We have families. We teach, we do all this stuff. But if we don't put the time in our work, are we really reaping the benefits of the skills that we're developing and building? You know what I mean? Like, we have to practice as well. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. Like, anytime you get a compliment on your drawing or your ability or technique or whatever, like, I always remind people that, yes, there is a sense in which, okay, some people have talent, some people don't, or have more or less or whatever. Like, my wife has an amazing talent for singing that I could never have. But if I had her gift and never practiced it, then I would never sound like her. And it's the same with drawing or painting or whatever. Like, even if you have the most amazing talent, if you never use it, like, it will slowly die. It will atrophy. And so, if you see someone that's drawing a portrait or something and it just looks so easy to them, and you're like, how in the world did you do that? You have to remember that there's years and years and years of practicing that. And it's just like anything else, like whether it's riding a bike or throwing a baseball, whatever it is, like, some people make it look so easy because they've been doing it for so long. And I think it's the same thing. Even if you have a great talent, you have to develop that talent with lots of practice.
I agree. We've got a great question from a constant contributor. Want to give a big shout out, Matt. Great to see you back on here, brother. We're always so glad when you join us. Patricia's still on, Deep Pixel AI Art. Everybody over on, gosh, we got quite a few over on Instagram. We thank you guys for joining us. It's amazing. But Chad, I want to give Matt his time. He always has such great questions. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Here we go, gentlemen. Here's the question. If you could travel, and Owen, I'm going to give this one to you first. Let's see what you got, because this was a shorter time period for you than it is us old men. If you could travel into the distant past, Chad, and give your 8-year-old self artistic advice, what would it be and why? Ooh, what a great question, Matt. Thank you for chiming in on this one. We'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I'll say this. I like giving a lot of thoughts to good questions, but I don't know if I have all the time in the world for this one. I think the immediate thing that I think of is something that my dad, I feel like always tells me and my brothers, which is just to be excellent at like what you do. Like, you know, if it's a passion or a talent or something that you want to pursue or whatever, it's just like be excellent at something. And I think within that, like, right, we've talked a lot about like just like practicing and failing. So I feel like if I had to give a piece of advice to my younger self, it'd probably just be like strive to be excellent and put in the work. I don't know. That might be kind of my immediate response, I guess. But
No,
I'm
that's
curious.
good.
I'm curious to hear what you guys say. I feel like you'll have a
And
lot of
as
wisdom.
we discuss, and you think of something else, brother, please feel free to chime on in on that.
Yeah,
We are not opposed to talking over each other, if you haven't noticed. But we love this question, and I agree with you. It is hard to think deeply about that off the cusp, but I like where your head's at, and I think I'm kind of in line with you. But Chad, are you good to go on yours? Or you want me to dive in?
Yeah, I can answer that. I think what I would tell my 8-year-old self is to devise. And it's so funny. I'd have to put this in language that my 8-year-old would appreciate. I would say or tell myself that I would need to devise a system of goals. And so when I was 8 years old, even up into college, like I didn't have the discipline to have specific goals because I didn't know where I needed to go. Whereas now I can look at my art practice and I know exactly what I need to work on and what direction I need to go in. And some of that just comes with experience. But I would set myself some small goals, and actually a whole range of goals. I'd set small goals, larger goals, and really big goals. And so small goals would be things like, and I tell my students this all the time, find the thing that you hate to draw and practice that, because usually what you don't like to draw, it's because you're not good at it. It's very difficult, and it's something that gives you a personal challenge. And the only way to get through that is to practice that particular thing. So if it's hands, draw tons of hands. If it's feet, draw tons of feet. If it's portraits, draw tons of portraits. So for me personally right now, I've set a goal for myself to draw a series of alien landscapes in my sketchbook. The reason why is because I'm drawing a sci-fi graphic novel, and I always think about all these, landscapes, or I see artists make all these amazing landscapes, but I have very few that I've actually drawn for myself. And so I thought, you know what? I need to actually sit down. And I thought to myself, why is that? And I thought the reason why that is because I'm intimidated by doing that. And so I thought, no, I need to sit down and actually work that out. Make some bad drawings, make some bad landscapes. It's fine. So anyways, long answer is a range of goals, I think, just to give myself some specific direction as I practice.
I love both of those answers, and I'm kind of in a similar vein. And I don't know if 8-year-old Seth would really take this wisdom and run with it or not. But I would tell myself, don't waste time. Enjoy life. Enjoy being 8, because we've got kids, Chad. We want our kids to enjoy being kids, right? And I don't mean like don't play and don't experience other things and don't only do art. That's not what I mean. I mean that as you progress, as I would grow up, don't waste time. Time is of the essence. Next thing you know, you're 40 years old, and you don't realize how quickly it goes. And so I think that kind of goes in line with what you're kind of saying, Chad, right? Which is like time management, I guess,
Yes.
Project management, like set goals, have an idea of this or that. And I do want to put a caveat in there. And Owen, I feel like, you were very fortunate to get a mentor very early, and I had some amazing teachers that guided me along the way. Cecilia Ridge. I wish, I hope she watches someday and she knows just how important she was. But I think that, start earlier, right? Focus earlier. Still experiencing all that life gives you. But Seth, don't waste time. I think that's kind of what I would tell myself. You can do this, right? You can be an artist. Don't waste time. Set goals, achieve things. Matt, what an amazing question. You always come up with these wonderful ones. I'm so grateful for you. We're all so grateful for you. And again, if you're just joining us, we're about halfway through, so I do want to give a quick recap. We are the Visual Arts Academy in studio. I'm Seth Jones, co-founder and instructor here. Along with us is the bearded wonder, the humble wizard himself, Chad Nuss, master draftsman, excellent storyteller, creator of many, many beautiful works of art. And along with us is a special guest this evening. Hopefully he'll return. Hopefully he's doing a great job. We have Owen Rairick, and he's just an unbelievably talented but hardworking, because I don't want to just say talent's the only reason he's achieving what he's achieving, but a very hardworking, talented artist, painter, illustrator, and fine art student out of the University of Cincinnati. Owen, we are so grateful to have you on. I was pleasantly surprised. He approached me. He goes, you know what? After the 4th of July, I'm in. Let's do it. And I was so jazzed, so stoked. We're so grateful to have you. Owen, your painting's coming along. I want to take this full screen here because one of the things that you talked about was color. Color is challenging, and I don't know if you know this, Owen, or not, because I don't know if we talked about it, but in August, we are going to be doing color theory classes. One of the highest level requested classes that we've had is color theory. And at the Savannah College of Art and Design, one of my great professors, I was so fortunate to have a number of amazing professors, was Professor Deborah Moshe, and she taught color theory. And color theory was incredibly challenging. I joke with my brothers, Owen, all the time that color theory was the hardest class I took. You mentioned that color was a challenge for you early on, including your mentor even mixing some pigments for you. But your colors here are beautiful. Tell us a little bit about your color choices here. I know you have a reference. I know you have a photo there. But tell us a little bit about these color choices that are going into this beautiful painting.
Yeah. I feel like probably like more than anything else, I'm trying to just stick to my reference. There's a few things that I'm trying to keep in mind while I'm working on this. It's maybe a little bit hard to see, but that's all right. These two buildings right here and right here, those are not the focal point. This is kind of the main building that I want to highlight. So I'm trying to put a little bit more, I guess, kind of like vibrance and life to this house right here and less so on these. Earlier when I was working on these, I guess a couple weeks ago probably, I painted them and then I put even just like a couple of just like washes of kind of like the background color over top of them to really just kind of push the values down, push the contrast down, kind of push them into the background a little bit more. And then for this middle building, really just trying to kind of push all of those things more. So like more vibrance and a little bit more contrast. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with that. So.
I think it's awesome. One of the things that Chad and I focus on very heavily out of the academy is the control of value, right? When you think about the principles of design, right, the elements of art, a lot of times people, in my opinion, and you guys can disagree with me here or anybody that's watching, anything that you guys want to chime in, please add your comments. Let me know what you think. But I think out of the elements of art, a lot of time we focus a lot on color, shape, space, and line, right? We focus on those pretty heavily. But oftentimes, Chad, I feel like we forget form, texture, and value. I think form, texture, and value tend to get lost in a lot of cases, right? And one of the ones that you and I really, really focus on as two of the instructors here is value control. Because often your color or your chroma you lose the ability to control your values because you let chroma dictate everything, if that makes sense. Well, this is a pretty color of blue, but is it the right value, if that makes sense, right? And a lot of times that's where your form and dimension come from, is from your value. And so, Owen, I love hearing you talk about some of these things with your colors and your color choices and selection. And Chad, you've talked about it. You don't work in color often. right? But your mastery of value, when I have seen you work in color, really enhances the pigments that you choose, right? Do you feel that's true? I know you don't feel the strongest in color, but the color work I have seen you do is beautiful.
Well, I appreciate that. I try to do beautiful things, so thank you so much.
There's the humble wizard. There he is.
Just messing with you. Yeah, you threw me off with the color question because I was actually thinking here I'm working in ink, and ink is very much black and white, but you still have to control your value.
Yeah.
And that's usually based on how much detail and texture you're putting in. Sometimes you can use a texture as a value when it comes to ink work. And when you look at a page overall, how you can read it often goes back to how you've inked it, how much black you put in there versus white, how many midtones you put in, those kind of things.
I think we talked about that a little bit last week, didn't you, sir?
I don't remember. Do what? I'm sorry?
Last week or 2 weeks ago, you talked about texture mark making, being able to control that value.
Yeah, because I was talking about, like, as you're using the pencil, you're thinking this is going to be inked. So you're not thinking like a penciler, or you're thinking like a penciler. You're not thinking about full rendering with shadows and shading. A lot of that's taken care of if it's colored by the colorist, or if it's black and white by the degree of mark making that you use. So I will intentionally use textures as a midtone. So I'll use a lot of cross hatching or specific patterns as a way of creating a midtone. But you also have to think in terms of the way you use detail can fill in and make it look a little midtone. So like even in the inking that I'm doing on this ship, there is a sense of not really a gray tone, but you kind of get a mid value here with all this detail. And it's really going to pop here in a minute when I fill in these longer areas in here are going to be all black. So that's going to really make, so this comes off as almost gray because of all the detail in there. And then these areas that I've outlined are going to be filled in with black because the light is coming from this corner. And so that's a cast shadow. So that's going to make this spaceship really pop and really stand out because it's so light around in this area. So I'm conscious of that whole process as I'm doing the pencils, which is why you'll see like in the pencils areas are kind of shaded in a flat tone because I want those to be flat black. So anyways, I know that doesn't really address the color question because truth be told, I don't use a lot of color. I'm not anti-color. I feel pretty confident in using color. Black and white is just something I enjoy. And yeah, I mean, once you throw in color, for me, it's like going from first level chess to like grandmaster chess because you're once you throw in color, like all of a sudden now you're not just concerned with the chroma or the particular color. You're also concerned with, as you said before, the value of that color, and it will change when it's put beside other colors too. So it's like you're working in multi dimensions, whereas with black and white,
harmonies,
there's so much more going into it. Yeah, it's so much more complex. Here's I think a different way of saying it. Writing a novel is like working black and white, but then as soon as you turn it into a comic book or a film, now you're working with color because now you're not only dealing with dialogue and narrative and those kind of things, you're also adding a visual element to it. So it makes it much more complex. So the person experiencing it is interpreting it on different levels, not just the auditory or the linguistic interpretation. They're also interpreting what they see. And so I think that's similar with black and white versus color. With black and white, it's very straightforward. With color, you're adding a whole nother level of complexity in your art making. So
I would agree. We've got another great question. Owen, this one's for you, buddy. We're going to see what you've got here. I love it that all of our viewers are utilizing this time to pick your brain. It's amazing to me, and I'm so grateful. Don't be afraid, guys. Owen is ready for these questions. Ask away, and here you go, bud. What are your goals for art school and beyond?
That's a great question. I
Thank
felt,
you for the getting there, Chad. I appreciate that.
I think that's a good question. Right along with what Chad was talking about, even just like setting goals, which I probably don't do enough, but I definitely have an answer. So I think even earlier in this live stream, I kind of even shared like some of my like early influences and some sort of like the, I guess, like genre of things that I like. So those are kind of being like fantasy. I really love fantasy. I really love, I guess it's this term. I don't know who coined it. I'm assuming it's James Gurney, but this idea of like imaginative realism, kind of like these things that are realistic but don't exist. I love that. I love like sci-fi, and I love all of that stuff. So kind of from there, some of my goals in the future, I would love to be like an illustrator and like concept artist. I'd love to be able to work with companies and like video game companies to design creatures and worlds and characters and buildings. And I think I'd love to be able to, help work along people like making movies and like pre-production and designing those sorts of things. Illustration, obviously, I love to oil paint. There's not a whole lot of oil paint in the concept art world, I'll say. But I'd love to be able to do like super awesome illustrations for board games and video games. Like I feel like even like Dungeons and Dragons and like Magic the Gathering and sorcery, those are like a few sorts of like games that I'd love to like paint for.
Now, Owen, so a couple of things. I really want to dive into this because I'm a giant video game nerd, and obviously Chad and I are big fantasy fans. And I don't know if you're able to, you're working on a very cool project. Are you able to show that really cool project, or is that something that you need to kind of keep under wraps?
Oh, no, I can show it.
Okay, good, because I really want you to show this. So we see a lot of custom artwork in the gaming world, right? We see, certain things that are, gosh, my camera's dying over here, so I apologize, guys. I'm going to update this, get this going real quick. Bear with me. But like even in the comic book world, Chad, we see a lot of blanks, right? Variant blank covers where you can do custom artwork. We do this in comics and cartooning. And in the card game world, though, you have some blanks as well. And Owen, you have a commission, or you have a work that you're doing for this amazing triptych of cards. Can you give us a sneak peek of what you got going on here and tell us a little bit about it?
For sure. So again, even just like a little bit of context, because I think that's always helpful. My dad has, probably more so than me, gotten into this game called Sorcery Contested Realm. And it's a trading card game. It's very similar to like Magic the Gathering, if you've heard that.
Who has it? If you're on this live stream, you probably know Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. So like I said, like a couple of seconds ago, like working for like Magic or Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons, like that would be that's a dream for me. But this is this is honestly like right up my alley and something else I'm super passionate and interested about. Hopefully I can, let's see here. Here, I'm gonna turn this the other way. Let's see. That's maybe better. Anyway. Regardless, so this
pretty good. We can see it pretty well. That looks great.
It's all right. Yeah. So this is a kind of a triptych of cards. Well, let's see. There we go. So this is a kind of a triptych of cards. So this is kind of all the same card, and it's from this game, Sorcery Contested Realm. And my dad kind of was a mutual contact for me, and this essentially, some of these people through a local game store reached out to me to do an altar of these cards as a prize for a tournament. that they're going to be hosting for this game. So it's kind of like around the theme of like explorers, and they also kind of wanted like a Kentucky sort of twist to it. So this is a card called Frontier Settlers, and I kind of have taken like 3 of them, like a play set, and kind of made like a little panorama triptych, and kind of designed this setting of the Ohio River and like this little Shawnee village. And there's like Lewis and Clark on the right with this Indian, and they're kind of looking out. Kind of the goal here was to, again, kind of like do this sort of like Kentucky inspired twist to these cards, but also like they're individual cards. And so trying to make each card kind of have a little bit of a kind of an element of kind of this idea of like, exploration, frontier settlers to each of them. So like, I kind of have the village in one and the Indian in one and Lewis and Clark in the other. So this one is nearly complete. I'll probably finish it up within like this next coming week here and get that off to them. But yeah, so I mean, I feel like as I guess you're kind of alluding to, Seth, this is definitely kind of like right up my alley of games and card games and oil painting and illustration and fantasy. And so, yeah. But
I think it's absolutely awesome. I think it's super cool. And I think that original kind of content is going to become a lot more popular, right? I think it's something that, you go to cons, you go to conventions, and you can really get some exposure by doing some of these kind of things, because, I mean, that's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for artists who can create content that look amazing on that scale, that looks really good, reads really well. And I think it's a super cool project. I think it's absolutely awesome that you get that kind of exposure. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm going to kind of pontificate on this for a second. If you're an artist out there and you get a chance to do something like this, do it. Don't be scared of it. Don't be intimidated by it. It's okay to have nerves. It's okay to be a little bit frightful of it, but do it. These are the experiences that get you professional chances, professional opportunities. It gives you work that, is going to push you and motivate you. And Chad and I have talked about, he and I went through phases of doing commission-based work, right, Chad? And you and I mean, you hated it, I hated it. But these are kind of projects that when you're a young artist, do challenge you and push you. And I think it's spectacular. I think it's really, really great. Now, granted, if I could have had an opportunity, Chad, to do cards like this instead of some of the commission work I had to do, maybe would have been a different story. You know what I'm saying? Like, the commission work I had was not necessarily fun. And not that all commission work is, right? You got to pay the bills. I get it. But just for me, it just wasn't what I was looking for. If I had a chance to do some cards like Owen's got, you guys got to take those chances. Don't let them pass you by, because it'll help you in so many ways. It'll push you as an artist. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And I think it's fantastic that you're pushing yourself in that way. I think it's absolutely great.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like even on top of that way, in a adjacent topic, like I feel like up to this point throughout my college experience, like, everyone's talking about connections and networking. And I feel like this is, maybe not kind of immediately a super big kind of like, wow, anything like that. But like, my dad likes playing this game and he's a part of this community, and he reached out to these people and these people reached out to me. And it's, even how I got to be in contact with you guys and now doing this live stream, my uncle, and it's all about these sorts of connections and networking. And, now it's like, even like just this summer with like the few things that I've been working on this summer, while not in classes, it's all by connections. And now I've got so many more doors opened and new people I've been able to meet. And I feel like, so I feel like that can even just be a testament to just like getting involved and meeting people, and obviously all that you were saying, Seth. So
absolutely. No, I think it's amazing. I think it's really strong. Chad, I know that, you've had quite the adventurous life, right? You've been open and honest about sometimes taking, the breaks that you took from your creative endeavors and, going into the culinary arts and, living in that realm and living in that adventure. But do you have a favorite project that you worked on that wasn't one of your own?
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity to work on an album cover and do some background work for a film So
That's awesome.
those were really cool. And I illustrated a book it's for a band I met and know through some connections or whatever. And that was a really cool experience because I really respect the band and respect them, and love their creativity and their approach to everything. And they were like super gracious with me and gave me a lot of freedom and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was really exciting to work on. So
That's
that would be the
fantastic.
one. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
my daughter, my my I designed that one of the album covers, and they made it into a T-shirt, and I got her the T-shirt, and then she heard the music on I think it was either on the radio or on Amazon Music, and I was like, yeah, I did the art for them, and she just was blown away. I was like,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
like I could text them right now if you want, and so I did, and she was just like blown away that I knew this guy, and so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So.
That is fantastic. You mean
Yeah.
like I'm blown away that you got to spend a day with David Mack?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, no, those are my only two claims to fame that I had. I got a day with David Mack, and that I got to do this album cover. So yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm just
I think it's awesome. I
yeah,
think part of the reason I asked that, Owen, is you know time does fly by, and I don't want to be one of those guys like, oh my gosh, time goes, but it does. And so when you get projects that really resonate with you, you're going to be talking about them 20 years from now. You know what I mean? Like Chad's talking about, you may eventually have a family or something like that if you choose, and you'll have those experiences with your kids. And I think it's spectacular to relive some of those moments of fun and excitement from some of the projects that we get to work on. And I think it's always such a joy. Thank you for sharing, Chad. Really appreciate you. We got another comment that came in, and I'm going to throw it out there. Here we go. Owen, it's another one for you, brother. What has your experience in art school been like thus far? What has been your best and worst experience in art school?
That's a good question. Yeah, I got a funny story maybe for like the second part to the last question, but I think overall it's been really, really cool. I think I shared maybe a little bit earlier, kind of about even just like my experience, but I think I think like one of probably the biggest things that has been very helpful and impactful over just like, I guess maybe like trying to pursue art and not going to school for it would be just kind of like the body of other artists that are kind of involved in that scene, like, just being able to collaborate and work along with and work, like, even if I'm not working on a project with someone, but working on a project next to them, right? Like, just like in the same room as them. Even like we have, whenever we finish up a project as a class, like we'll do critiques. And so we'll give like some constructive feedback to each other, and like that's super valuable. And
You
so
mean almost like the studio environment that we provide here at VAAS?
pretty much, yeah. So yeah, so like that, I think just like the community of artists, like that's been super valuable. And that's been, I think, a very, I don't know, I guess, I don't know, a very good part, a very helpful part about just like art school in general. I think, trying to think if there's anything else there. I think, again, just like having a space to work is also good. Having even just like at, maybe apart from art school, more just like college in general, like just being able to meet new friends and being a part of kind of like other sorts of extracurriculars. And, there's a church that I go to right off campus, and getting involved with them and the things that they do, and all around just kind of a place to just meet people and again, like just like connections and learning new things constantly, of course. I think a part that I think that I maybe dislike about art school thus far, with kind of like my experience thus far, there have definitely been, I feel like just like some classes that I feel like this probably goes for maybe like any sort of college major. Like there's classes that I have to take that are in my opinion, kind of pointless, which is kind of a bummer.
The redundancy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like there's always this like one sort of kind of like lecture class that I've had every semester where it's kind of like, you have to take it if you're in fine arts, and it's kind of like the style of maybe like an art history class, but we're talking about like more maybe like contemporary art or modern art, or kind of like, honestly, a lot of stuff we talk about I'm not really interested in, which is my personal preference. But and then
you sound a lot like Chad and I here, bud.
And then it's a lot of like, I don't know. So there's that, which has been kind of, it's like, okay, well, it is what it is, I guess. And then there's been maybe like a couple, every semester there's like kind of like a set selection of studios that I have to take. And so sometimes like one studio I take is like really, really cool, and the professor's awesome, and I make a lot of cool stuff. And the other one, I feel like I don't learn anything, and it's kind of a bummer. And I'm doing a bunch of things that, like I'm not really learning from. So that's kind of a bummer. But yeah.
I would agree. I think that's
the struggle. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to chime in on that for a second, because I think you're, having a lot of, being a former teacher, a traditional teacher, if you will, high school teacher, I think that a lot of it is from the instructors, right? Mm-hmm. And some of it can be the subject matter of the class, but it is hit or miss. It is hit or miss with some of those instruction levels. But I think that's a pretty common thing, to your point, right, Owen? Like, it's a challenge. But you had made a comment to me one day, and I hope it's okay that I share this, that somebody, I don't know if it was a professor or somebody else, but they had made a comment that you were very traditionally oriented with your execution. And has that been a challenge for you, in the sense that you still do, oil painting for, contemporary illustrative work? Or has that been liberating for you, in the sense of you're not doing it kind of this modern contemporary way? If that makes sense. I don't know if
I think that makes sense. I think I'm just going to give a boring answer, I think. But I think I haven't really noticed any sort of like massive, maybe like I haven't noticed maybe kind of like my style or approach being more traditional as a hindrance or in any way. I think if anything, it's just maybe I'm working with mediums that are traditional, and like oil paint, for example, like it just takes me longer to work with it, because it just takes longer to dry, or I'm still just kind of slow with oil paints. And so maybe it's, maybe I'm taking a little bit longer than some of my peers that are working on a similar project, just because I'm working on it in a different way, I guess.
Well, you are speaking Chad's language when you talk about slow, right, Chad?
What are you trying to say?
No, but I'm not. Well, I guess I could. Yeah, you're so slow. No, but I mean, you openly talk about your pace of completing work, Chad.
Yes.
But you absolutely find value in your pace. And you have worked, and I don't want to speak for you here, because I want you to kind of elaborate on this, especially for Owen, because you own it and you value it. And, there have been times, I think, where you feel challenged because other people work so daggone fast, right? And you fall into that comparison. I'm comparing myself to so-and-so.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because you do have, and I don't mean this really, you have a slower pace of creation. But talk about how you came to terms with that, and why you value that.
Yeah, I think, it's like the old saying, and I'll butcher the saying, but basically like comparison is the thief of joy, I think it is, or whatever. I mean, everyone has their own style and pace. And I think just as I've gotten older, there is a certain amount of contentment that just settles in, because you don't worry so much about comparing yourself to other artists. Everyone has their own speed and their own process. I mean, obviously, if I'm doing this professionally and it's a choice between me and someone else, and the other person can pull off 3 works in the time it takes me to do 1, obviously they're going to go with that person. So there is a practical side of that. But for me, I don't have to worry about that because I've always kind of taken the position of, and this is going to be different for me than it was for you, Owen, or for other artists. Like, I like the idea of just having a regular job to pay my bills, and then I have the freedom to do art however I want. And so, yeah, I've just embraced being a slower artist, but I think there's advantages to that. And in fact, I was talking to Layla about that today. Just in working with charcoal, there is an advantage to working slower and working in layers and building things up gradually. Actually, Patricia, if she's still on, can vouch for this because we had our drawing class this last time. I had us draw just a basic sphere because we're talking about lighting and shading and that kind of thing. And we drew together side by side. And I was drawing so slow. Like she was just like, this is taking you so much longer, but your process is creating something that looks more beautiful. And I said, well, part of what I'm doing is I'm very subtly layering graphite over graphite over graphite,
Right.
and I'm letting
Right.
the shadows build themselves up. If I just go in with a 6B pencil, it's going to be really grainy. It's not going to be as soft. But if I take a 3H and an HB and I just layer over layer over layer, I'm going to get the same darkness. Well, maybe not as a 6B, but I'm going to get the darkness but
Right.
a soft quality to it and smoother transition. So either way, I'm kind of going down a rabbit trail, but all that to say that, yeah, Matt and I actually have talked about this because he also feels like he's a slower artist. And I said, it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it matters if you have a deadline, but if you don't have a deadline, it doesn't matter if it takes you 3 months to create the same thing that someone else took 3 weeks. No one, when they look at your art, is going to say, well, how long did that take you? They may ask you that, but if you say 3 months, they're not going to care. They're going to be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. It's not a race against each other. So yeah, I think you've got to find a contentment in yourself, and that brings a measure of confidence because you're not measuring yourself against someone else. So it doesn't matter how fast or slow you are.
Well, I think, oh man, Chad, I love the wisdom that you share, and Owen, and you as well, even as a younger artist. But I think some of that is the current world that we live in, where you see these videos, or I get sucked into them, where they'll say something like, 50,000 hours of work, in 60 seconds or something. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's 60,000 hours of, I'm exaggerating maybe, but
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? It's almost like this badge of honor. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what if somebody works faster? What if I got on there like I had, and I've shared this story before. I had someone who looked at one of my paintings and was like, how much do you sell that for? And I said, well, this amount. And they go, oh, well, that's quite a bit. And I'm like, well, it's not, and whatever. And then they go, well, how long did it take you to make? And I said, the hours that it took. And they go, God, that's highway robbery. I can't believe you're charging that amount for a painting that took you this amount. I go, well, what if I would have told you it was 80,000 hours? Would you have said, well, you're underselling it because you're equating time and mastery instead of the value of what the artwork is? And I think that's kind of this contemporary world we live in, right? Where they think certain things mean something and they don't. You know what I mean? I just struggle with that because I agree with both of you gentlemen very sincerely that your own pace of work is valued because you value it, not because someone else.
Yeah, there's a famous illustration of Picasso. He ran into that where I've heard 2 versions of this story, so I'll just kind of blend them together. But he was in a restaurant, or he was giving an interview or something, and someone he drew something on a napkin, and someone asked him like, how much would you say that's worth? And he gave like this crazy like thousands of dollars, and the person was like, you would charge thousands of dollars for that little napkin drawing? And they were like, it just took you like 2 minutes to draw. And he said, no, it actually took me 30 years to draw.
Right.
Because he was basically making the point that drawing, it took years and years to get to that level to be able to do that. So like it's that's the difficulty also of like pricing your own art, is that you can't put a price tag on how long things take, because there's so much more that goes into it than just the hard, like, oh, this took me 10 hours. Yeah, well, you're also putting into account the years you spent before that, leading up to that level. So,
well, I hope, Owen, this is okay to share, but, Owen had approached me and said, hey, can we talk a little bit about pricing artwork? And, and I gave him this long-winded variable answer, and I don't know if I helped or not, but, that is one of the things that I talked about, which is, I do, have an hourly quote unquote rate that I will kind of generally price myself at, if that makes sense. But I also told Owen, I said, but I don't always hold to that, right? That doesn't, just because the hourly rate doesn't mean that that's always what it should be for a certain work, good or bad, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean that that's just what it sits at. If a piece was more challenging, or if a piece was more complex, or if I value the piece more and I don't want it to go anywhere, that changes my whole approach. And so I think, there's different methodologies of pricing. And I think you're right, Chad. It is a challenge, no matter which direction you go. But I think, sometimes an hourly rate isn't always the best way to go.
yeah, just as a side note about the pricing thing, I mean, I think about that all the time. Like, if I do a drawing that I can get done in an hour, let's say I go out and do a plein air charcoal drawing and it comes out really nice, and it's like 18 by 24, my immediate thought is, I'd probably charge like, I don't know, I need to think more. This might sound outlandish, but just bear with me. I might charge like $200 for that. And someone might be like, you just charged $200 for an hour of work. And I'm like, yeah, but the value of that drawing, like, people will look at that drawing. If they want that drawing, they're going to be willing to pay for it. So that's another aspect of it too. Like, I could spend 1,000 hours on a drawing that no one wants, so, so if I charge, $3,000 for that, no one's going to buy it because they don't really want it. But you could do something really quick in an hour that a lot of people want, that's beautiful, and you can kind of raise the price on that. That's just the reality of the business side of art. It's like, also the size. Like, so I do incredibly large. I say incredibly. I do really large.
Some are very large
pencil drawings. And so if I would definitely price that out differently than if I were to do like this drawing that I'm drawing here, to the point where, like, it would probably be more than what people are willing to pay, because number one, I don't want to get rid of it. Like the portrait of my wife, like, I know no one really wants a portrait of my wife, but they may want the drawing itself because of the quality of the drawing or whatever.
The execution.
But, yeah, yes. The execution of the technique. But I don't want to give that drawing away. So I'm not going to, like, sell that for, $500. I would literally probably sell it for like $20,000, because I don't want someone to buy it. And I don't think someone's going to pay $20,000 for it. So I'd be happy pricing it so high that no one's going to buy it. But if I wanted to sell it, I would probably definitely bring it down to where it's more reasonable. It's so many variables that go into it. So.
Yep. And I agree with that. I mean, I always, I've had mentors, and I've always had the statement of, I guess, I don't know if it's because of the way I was raised or with the people that I've been around, everything's for sale, right? Like, as far as my artwork. But to Chad's point, some things are going to be a lot pricier if you want it, because I don't really care if I sell it. It's more impactful for me than if I priced it at like a quote unquote hourly rate or size rate. Some artists will base it off of size, right? They know what their average size pieces sell. But I don't know. I think it's a tricky thing, and it's a slippery slope. But I do think that the biggest thing you can do is value your work, and things will follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other aspect too, which is unfortunate but it's just reality, is your reputation. So if someone is like a semi-famous artist, they are able to, or a famous artist, they're able to charge a lot more, because the value is not so much in the artwork itself. It's more in the reputation of the artist and the notoriety. Yeah. For someone to say, like, Owen, if you're super famous, and I could say, oh, I've got a work from Owen, I forget your last name, I'm so sorry.
Rairick.
Rairick. Yeah. If I say I've got a piece by Owen Rairick, and that's like the hot piece right now, well, I may have bought it from you for $500. I could turn around and sell it for $50,000 because there's so much demand on it. That's just the other reality too, you know? So like someone may look at my drawing and say, oh, you could charge so much more. I'm like, well, I'm relatively unknown. So like, I'm not going to be able to sell it for that much, you know? So that's another factor as well. There's just so many different factors, like intangible factors that go into pricing what you do.
Boy, we went on a nice long tangent there, which is the title of this episode. The long answer is.
Yeah.
But I love it. I hope that these are impactful conversations, everyone. I hope these are things that, bring you some insight, or maybe it's something you've been thinking about if you're an artist, or maybe just as a fan of art, you've been wondering, how does this work? What does this look like? How does this kind of come into existence? I think these kind of conversations are healthy, and I think they're good. And I hope you guys are gleaning something from it. But ask questions. We've got a little bit longer here with Owen, and we're so grateful. His painting's coming along nicely. It's amazing to see things come to life as we work on them. And I hope that you're creating at home. I hope you've got your needle and thread in front of you, your oil paint, your pastels, your pencils, your sketchbook, whatever it may be, because the goal of VAAS Live, the long answer, is to create together, whether you're locally, whether you're remote. It doesn't matter where you're from. We're so grateful all of you people are joining us on all these different amazing platforms. Chad and I talk all the time that we love the local community. We love the idea, as Owen talked about before, about being in art school, being in a community, being in a studio space, being around each other is so vastly motivating and inspiring. And we have the tools now with these live streams and with these videos and the platforms that we have to create with you no matter where you live. So we hope that you're enjoying this. We hope you have your creative works in front of you. Matt, we hope you're drawing. We hope you're sketching. We know how much work you're putting in. Patricia, your watercolors, your sketching, your drawing, your portrait work. Everybody else that's out there, Wyatt, Tom, Ellie, Jay, Carrie Rairick. I mean, all these individuals, we love you guys for joining us, but we hope you're creating too, because everybody has some creativity inside of them, and we hope that you're getting it out. So thank you for joining us. Owen, we are just so excited for your creative endeavors. It's been absolutely amazing to watch this come to life. Chad, your inking is just absolutely beautiful, and I want to bring out something here. I want to talk about this, your use of blacks. Now, you are a huge fan of solid blacks, correct, sir?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely, use them to your advantage. I mean, the immediate one, I think, and this is not, he hasn't really had like a direct influence on me, but someone like Frank Miller uses high contrast black and white to his advantage. I'll probably get, to the average comic book fan, I'll probably get roasted for this, but he's not my favorite artist. I don't like his art, but his use of black and white is masterful. And so for that, I definitely respect him. Some of his other stuff is trash, but
I knew you were going to go there. I knew you were going to go there.
That's probably a little harsh, but either way, all that to say, yes, using black is, you have to be delicate with it, because if you do too much of it, then it flattens everything out. But you can definitely use it for a focal point and for drawing the eye in certain places and that kind of thing. So.
Chad, I am in the middle of dropping some of these highlights in here, sir. Is there any chance you could take a look at that comment from Matt, and could you kind of direct us on that? I'm kind of focused on this, and I don't want to miss what I've got going on at the second.
For sure. I mean, I just want to highlight, first of all, and I'll even post this amazing comment by Matt. I definitely am, and Chad's advice and wisdom has been priceless. Seth, I would like you to just kind of meditate on that just for a few minutes, if you could, while you're putting in your highlights, and we'll go to the next one. So his other question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing competition as Thomas has and does? So last week, Thomas and I were on this live stream together, and we were discussing kind of goals and those kind of things, and what came out of that was some of the competitions that he had submitted to, and we talked a little bit about that process. And so for you all, I'm gonna hand this over to you, because I've actually not been a part of many competitions in my life. It's probably something I should get more involved in. But for you guys, tell us your thoughts. What are the advantages and disadvantages of doing competitions?
Well, Owen, I don't know if you have any insight there, sir, or if you want me to kind of take that one.
I can give probably a little bit of an answer.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I definitely don't like extensively pursue art competitions, especially like just like right now. Maybe not like right now, but just being in school and usually just being very busy and not having a lot of time to like cater any particular art that I have to a particular art competition. But I have entered into some before, and I think. I guess I'll start with the disadvantage because I have an answer for that first. I think it can be a challenge to. I mean, I guess like if you're entering into an art competition, usually the goal is to win it. I think would be a fair answer to that. And so I think it can be a challenge to win an art competition if that is your goal. Just because I feel like sometimes it's like it's hard to judge art. At least for me personally, and I think other people could probably share in that opinion. Like there's definitely kind of a subjective nature to art. For me, like there are things that I like and there are things that I don't like, but that might also be different for the person next to me who might like things I don't like and might dislike things that I do like. And so it can be kind of hard to judge art in that way. So usually if you're entering into an art competition, and maybe you haven't done extensive research to try to match what the judges are looking for, particularly. Right. Like it can be hard to get it. Well, it can be hard to know, I think, to be fair. Like it can sometimes be a little bit of a gamble. I mean, there have been art competitions that I've gone into and it's like, okay, I think I got a fair shot. And then I didn't get anything. And I saw the person that won. I was like, okay, like, I mean, mine wasn't amazing.
Experiences as well.
Yeah.
And mine as well. That is a challenge. I agree with you. That is a huge one.
Even regardless if I entered into it myself or not, like I might not always agree with the outcome or whatever. But I think an advantage of it, I think depending on what it is, there's if I get the name of this wrong, it's gonna be so sad. But there's a gallery in LaGrange called like Gallery like 104 or something like that. And they'll have art competitions and stuff kind of like for people in the community. So that would be, I think, an example of like, even if like the judging part or like the winning part might be a little bit of a gamble. It's like, well, if you go and you can meet other artists and you can collab, you can, network, or you can be like, okay, I really like your art. Like we should do something, or we should contact each other, or we should put something together, or, or just getting to know other artists. I think that can be an advantage. You won't always have that, I suppose, if it's like maybe more of like a purely like online digital submission or whatever, and you never meet anyone, there might not be a whole lot that comes out of that if you don't, win or something. But I guess that would probably be my like initial thoughts to that question, which, yeah, that's a good question for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of piggyback off of that just quickly, because I think, Owen, you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of pluses, a lot of minuses. I will say that I think, submitting, it can become very tedious because there are so many options for submitting out there. But I think it's also can be a sense of accomplishment at some point, right? Like you can feel like, hey, I'm working, as Chad mentioned. Again, I try to bring things back around to our conversations. Chad would go back to his younger self and set goals. And I think sometimes submitting to things can be a great goal. See what I did there, gentlemen? And
good. I like it.
I think that's huge, is because sometimes submitting, it is an accomplishment in itself, right? If that makes sense, everybody. Like submitting to these things is an accomplishment because it takes courage to put your work out there. Chad talks a lot about how a lot of our artwork is very personal. It is very much a part of us. And when you submit, you're putting it, as Owen mentioned, into the hands of people who are going to judge it. Rightfully, wrongfully, indifferently, it is being judged, and you're putting your soul out there in a certain sense. You're putting your creativity out there, and that can be intimidating and it can be scary, especially if you don't hit it. And sometimes it can be challenging because we think we have an idea of what's good and what's not, right, Owen? Like we have an idea of what is quality and not quality. And when you see some winners, you go, well, wait a minute, mine must be really crap then if this won, or you can be very downtrodden. I think that's a negative because you can feel very defeated by that. And I don't think that's good. You know what I mean? Like, I think you have to be very conscious of what you're submitting and how you're submitting it and why you're submitting it. But I think it can be a very healthy thing to put yourself out there and to be in front of others. And as Owen mentioned beautifully, connecting with other artists, getting involved, being engaged in the community. If that's what you want, it's okay to create on your own and be isolated. That's fine, but you don't have to. And these competitions are good. The other thing I'll say, Matt, is not all competitions are created equal, right? There's a lot of stuff out there. Not all are going to get you notoriety. Not all are big events. Not of them all are these big, huge things. And that's okay, right? It doesn't always have to be this big, big thing. But just know that not all art competitions are created equal. And some of them are not very transparent either, right? Like, what are the qualifications for judging? Who are the judges? That's one that I always get is like, who's actually judging this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, is it Uncle Jimmy down in the basement who's never looked at artwork in his life? Because clearly, I kid, I joke. Uncle Jimmy's a brilliant art connoisseur, I'm sure. But you guys, I think, know what I mean is that you got to be mindful of that. You got to be, all of these different things. And I think there's a lot of benefits that come from it. And I think it can be a very, very enjoyable experience. I think it can be. You just got to be careful not to let it beat you down if you submit and don't get any responses. Don't let that deter you. Chad, you got a big throw out here. If you can, when you get a chance, glance at the screen. But Owen, I love your response. I think it was great. I think it was wonderful. And Matt's just throwing out all these beautiful, beautiful questions, and we're so grateful for it.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, Owen, just quickly, have you ever thought about submitting to the Spectrum?
You'll have to enlighten me on what that is because I'm not sure. And right. And to answer the question, I have not thought about it because I do not know what it is.
All right, Matt. So I'll give you a minute to respond to that, to explain what Spectrum is. And I am going to respond to this. Hey, Chad, I'm with Tony and Penny Tabor. They say hello. That is amazing. I love Tony and Penny Tabor. We went to church many, many years ago when I first became a Christian and first started going to church. So I've known them for about 25 years now. And they were a huge encouragement to me personally. And I've had their son Clay in my Sunday school for many years too. So I love seeing their family online and seeing them, how he's married now and has kids, which is crazy to me. Wow. But that is just how time works. Yeah. So I remember seeing Tony and Penny in the Aldi parking lot, probably I want to say like a month ago or a month and a half ago or something like that. And they had mentioned having connection with people that they knew at VAAS. So yeah, so that's so amazing. So Tony and Penny, I am so sorry that you have to deal with Patricia. I have to deal with her in my drawing class. So I feel your pain in your friendship with her. And no, I'm just kidding. I love hanging out with Patricia. And this past 8 weeks of drawing class with her has been really awesome and encouraging. And as much as she gives herself a hard time, she really is a brilliant portrait artist and has very many talents and skills. And she does an awesome job. And I love just the banter of being sarcastic with her. So I have a lot of fun having her in class for sure. So
as have I. I don't know if we got the response here, but I'm going to chime in real quick. Spectrum, Owen, is I can't remember if it's yearly. I think it's yearly. It's a collected submission work of fantasy art and concept art. And it's some of the world's best. Oh, here you go. Here it is. Actually, Matt gave a better answer than I was probably going to give. Spectrum is a fantasy art competition. They take the top so many submissions from each category and make that into a book. The likes of Boris and Julie Bell and many others have submitted. This is an annual competition, has been going on for at least 25 years. I actually, Owen's upstairs in the academy right now from the live stream. I have one of the books down here that you can take and look at, and I think you should start submitting to it. I think Matt's got a great thought there that you should start putting some work into it, sir.
Yeah, awesome. To go back to your first question then, Matt, I have thought about it now. I'll definitely look into it. I have, on a similar note, I have heard of a kind of like I don't know if it's like international or if it's global, but it's definitely at least like, I think it is pretty big, but it's called like IX.
Oh yes, I've heard of that one as well. Yeah,
I have heard of that definitely, which I think is, it sounds like it's a little bit
Similar.
at least. My dad's
Spectrum
not
is
actually. Oh yeah, go ahead.
no. Spectrum's been a big deal for quite some time, as he said, like over 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was at college at SCAD, Spectrum was the kind of it publication if you were going to get into that kind of artwork, the concept art,
sure.
fantasy art, that kind of stuff. And to me, it's amazing because as many publications kind of come and go, they're still running wild. You know what I mean? They're still high end, high quality. And I think it's brilliant that Matt mentioned that to you. How wonderful.
Yeah. That sounds super cool. I'll definitely have to kind of keep that on my radar for sure. Appreciate it.
Well, gentlemen, we are coming up. Can you believe how quickly 2 hours goes? We've got about 4 or 5 more minutes here. Any last minute questions from anybody? Please chime in. Let us know. We've got Owen for just a few more minutes. Owen, I think you've done a spectacular job. I don't know how Chad feels because he's tough to please, but I think it's absolutely brilliant to have you on. I hope that you join us again. We're so grateful and glad that you've been a part of the Academy here for the last month and the next coming month or so until you got to head back into your work. But we're so grateful that you were here, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten some great work done. The painting looks amazing. Your work's amazing, and I'm just really grateful that we get to build with you in your creative endeavors. But Chad, I don't know. The banter's coming back and forth, but Trisha's going to make you pay, she says.
That's fine. What she doesn't realize is the exercises and the work that I'm going to have for her on Monday. So she can say whatever she wants, but yeah, she still has to come in and do some drawing for me. So yeah, so I'm not threatened by her.
I'm glad you're not. I am not kidding. No, it's amazing, guys. We are so grateful for the community that we are building here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We have done some amazing work. I actually got most of the hair done. I've got a few more layers to go. Chad, how's your inking going? How do you feel about the accomplishments you got today?
Pretty good. I feel like I'm at a good spot as far as what I got done today. So I finished up the spaceship. Here, I'll actually raise up the camera so we can take a look at it a little more closely. So yeah, so I got the main part of the spaceship done. I've got the shadow behind the spaceship done, and then I'm starting to do some kind of action lines in the corner. So the light source is up in the right hand corner. It's hard to see because it's got the tracing paper laid over it, but so far here's what you can see is that spaceship over kind of a silhouette. Yeah, there we go. So let's see if I can do this, hang on to the iPad without dropping it. So I tried this before and I clicked off the page, so I want to be careful here. But yeah, up here this is the entrance to the tunnel. So the light source is coming down this way, which is why you have this long cast shadow. It's going up into this tunnel, and so that spaceship is going to launch up through that tunnel. And so I'm doing some action lines there at the bottom just to give it some emphasis on the kind of verticality and movement and motion and all that kind of thing. So I'm pretty happy where I got here today, and I look forward to working on it this week.
Fantastic. Owen, what do you think? You were focused. I was amazed at your ability to work and talk and chat and give us so many insightful comments. What do you think? How's it looking? What do you think of your accomplishments and your work so far today?
It's good. I got more than I was expecting to, which is a pleasant surprise. I didn't know how. I don't usually talk while I'm working, so I didn't know how well that was going to work out. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased. It's a little hard to see it, but I think I was able to get most of kind of the front facade of the house done, which is nice. Got some shadows under the windows, and I got kind of like there's like some cobblestone I kind of have to finish up right there. I'll have to finish up the little top of that roof, but yeah, I'm liking it. So I'm happy with where it's headed.
Love it, and hopefully they didn't watch this live stream and are not the surprise is not ruined for their wonderful, amazing gift that they had. If they do, we apologize, but wait, you'll get to see what the final work looks like at the end.
True.
And guys, I'm feeling pretty good about mine. I'm going to see if I can tilt up here. I've got Everly's hair going pretty well. Feel pretty good about that. I'm working down on some of the other areas and corrections. So I'm going to be building up this. And pretty soon on this live stream, I'm going to work on the color glazes. So as Chad continues to ink and draw, some of our special guests like Owen and others join us. I'm going to continue to work on this painting, and we'll start dropping in some colors pretty soon. But ladies and gentlemen, we are so grateful for all the wonderful comments. Patricia, Matt, everybody else that joined on all the different platforms on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Instagram. We're so grateful for all of you guys. I'm co-founder and instructor Seth Jones, along with our humble wizard Chad Nuss and master draftsman, and amazingly talented and hardworking young artist Owen Rairick. From all three of us, we hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone.